County Budget Workshop this Tuesday, April 30th, 2019. I call this meeting to order. I declare a quorum is present and the media has been notified. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. McQuillan, a second by Reverend Spann to approve the agenda. We'll now give it over to Ms. Ashley Smith for a budget workshop.
Good evening, Chairwoman Wofford, members of the board, and Dr. Ingram. I wanted to start by saying thank you very much for our first budget workshop. It went very smoothly, and I appreciated all of your recommendations and suggestions. So hopefully we've taken everything into account that we discussed at the first workshop into this evening's presentation. The only change to this particular slide is after speaking about revenue, I had it at 9.5%. So I upped it to 10% after discussions, and so that's going to bring us, for our projected property tax revenue, a 10% increase to 8.6. The other two items, there were no change in these dollar amounts. The base student cost is still at the implied amount of $24.67, but we are capping it at $24.80 for presentation purposes, and that is what has been recommended by the State Department of Education. Based on the increase in the previous slide that I talked about with the 10% increase in revenue, that brings our local tax increase to 11.8. In our previous presentation, it was around 11.4. There's no change to the EFA number or the revised Education Finance Act for growth. There's no change there. The new teacher salary increase, based on the Senate projections, that actually decreased about $200,000 from the previous number that you saw. State aid is the same. Our total revised revenue increase projection is $19.7 million.
So do we think the state is planning to fund the entire 4%? At this point?
It doesn't completely fund it. It's about 80%. So, including with benefits, it doesn't completely cover it. Right. We do have a large percentage that we have to cover. For the school level request, we looked at that a little bit last time. We took into account the additional nurse supplies, EMH and EMD supplies, travel allocations, media and library books, special art allocations. Those are very high on the list from our schools, so we revamped the allocation formulas. And if you will remember, I think you have a copy of it up there. This will also be presented when we do the first reading of the budget for approval. We'll need to get this approved as well, so that shows the changes that pretty much gives the schools what they're asking for. We also wanted to address the 31 bookkeepers. We are adding that into the budget for next year as well.
Will we have a bookkeeper at each school now, or every school?
Yes. No, I'm sorry.
No.
It's everyone over 500.
500.
We went back and forth, so, but yes, it will be every school with 500 or more students will have a bookkeeper.
Okay, and what did we say about the school with less students?
We want to address that next year and to make it where we have a bookkeeper in every school, regardless of size. That was the discussion in the last budget workshop. It was originally 31 reduced to 17.
To 17, yes.
Because of it was 750. So
we went to 750.
As a board, decided that we wanted to go back to the 31, and at that point, it's any school that has 500 or more students will then, of course, all high schools currently have a bookkeeper. So the way it is now, any school over 500 or more will get a bookkeeper if they don't currently have one. Mm-hmm. And next year, I hope that we can make the additional, however many schools, 8 or 9 schools, I think.
Right.
Something like that. We could add those.
Add those in the 2021 budget. We will address that. And when we look at the district level request, we had a lot of conversation at the last meeting about this. And if you'll refer to that spreadsheet, you should have a handout. And that changed from the last numbers, we discussed adding back some additional employees in maintenance, and we also talked about 8 mental health counselors and adding 2 social workers. And also at the bottom, you'll see in blue, there's a new request that we did not discuss, but Dr. Ingram brought this to my attention, and he wanted to add 5 additional days for basketball coaches, and that's an additional request of around $50,000. And that's open for discussion. Since that is a new request, we can leave it in, remove, whatever the board desires. In addition to that, I also talked to Dr. Ling, and she was telling me that we could also look at some federal funding to fund some of the new positions that we talked about with the mental health counselors and social workers. So when I do the first reading of the budget, it may decrease our expenditures because we may be able to use some of the federal funds to fund some of these positions. So our overall picture now with our total projected revenue at 19.7, the first items didn't change much. The teacher only step increase, everything there is the same. 1% retirement is the same. 4% increase teacher salary scale, IRF insurance increase, and the 59 teacher allocations that were previously approved by the board. There's no change to those numbers from the first workshop. The next line, the $525,000 for additional allocations, that has changed since the last meeting. It has gone up $200,000. We decided to look at that in more detail, and we've determined that we needed additional positions. So we added 3 office clerks, 1 bookkeeper, 1 kindergarten assistant, 5 custodians, and 1 instructional assistant, and we dropped the additional administrative assistant from the previous one. We determined that we did not need that position, but that increased that number to $525,000.
And are those custodian painters?
No, sir.
James?
No, so those are custodians.
They're custodians. Mhm.
We didn't include the .5 assistant for the alternative school, did we?
No, sir, because that doesn't fall within the allocation formulas, and that would, but if that's,
I understand.
if the board would like to discuss that, we can discuss that.
I think it's very hard to run without it.
Okay. Well, we
I
can,
agree.
we can certainly incorporate that in the first reading.
Are they
keep-
currently working on the, are they currently working on a grant for mental health?
On a grant for mental health?
Or are they saying they can find one and try to get it?
I'm uncertain of a grant that's being written for it.
You were saying that there may be grant money that covers the
Oh, I'm
mental
sorry.
health positions.
In the federal funds, Dr. Ling, she's works with the Office of Federal Programs, and we are going to meet on Monday and discuss how her funding can help us reduce some of the expenditures in the general fund. So she already has funding available, and it's how she can allocate her funds.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I misunderstood your question.
I think Mr. Barrow makes a good point, just as far as something for us to consider, is we're keeping the alternative school pretty full. So I think we're pretty consistent with that. So we need to think about that, just because it definitely seems that we're putting pressure and we're maxing out. I know we got a great principal there that's leading it, but
And I would say that the population is different, challenging at the alternative school more than an average school,
without question.
which would be why, because I do like to follow the formula. What the formula says, I like to apply the formula and apply that fairly, but some support.
If we could save some of the money through the federal money on the mental health workers, then possibly that would help us to fund a part-time person.
Half.
So maybe not drop it, but still keep it in the loop of consideration.
And I can work with Dr. Whitley on the formulas, and we can certainly look at that and incorporate that into the first reading of the budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did I miss the maintenance? section?
When we were talking about, when we did the district level request, we added the positions that were cut. We added all of the positions that were requested from maintenance. We added them back into the budget. I do not believe it included painters. They were not an original request, but we gave maintenance everything they requested for this year in personnel.
I thought he needed some painters.
Well, we did discuss that last time. We did not include that in the budget. When we're looking at $1.5 million over budget, we can certainly discuss that if we need to.
I think we should discuss that because we only have 5.
Money.
From my remembrance. Is that right, Jim?
Yes, sir, that's correct, but we are fine right now in that area.
You're fine
with the
with that?
painters. I'm fine, and I'm more than gracious with what the board actually.
Okay, moving along, 4% for all employees did not change. The $400,000 for school level request, and that will be incorporated with the new allocation formulas. And as we discussed, the 1.5 is now the new number for district level request, and we will also add that 0.5 in for the alternative school.
Thank you.
The 31 bookkeepers and our total funding requests are now $21.2 million, so that puts us at $1.5 million. And as we discussed in the last workshop, we are at 20% of fund balance, so that gives us $55.8 million of fund balance. Our requirement is 15%, which is $41,700,000. So that gives us additional $14.1 million over what is required. So there's a little bit of wiggle room, so the board can go over budget this year. We also did talk about the additional raise, so we want to keep that in mind when we're looking at going over budget. In the event that we needed it for that additional raise that was given mid-year, we want to keep that in mind, that may come out of fund balance as well. And as promised, we talked last time about the hepatitis B vaccinations. There isn't a PowerPoint, but you do have a handout. And I met with Mr. Brandenburg, our OSHA officer, and we talked about a 3-year plan. He's just flipped to the second page. He talks about in 2011, we stopped administering the hepatitis B vaccinations due to unknown reasons, and in late 2018, they revised the exposure control plan, and we need to be in compliance because we are no longer in compliance with federal OSHA guidelines. And if you flip to the next page, employer's responsibility, which our main responsibility is, and he wanted me to emphasize that it is that we are not compliant with OSHA. The next page is a list of our employees that are determined at risk. And the hepatitis B 1-year plan, that was the original request that was presented, and it would be a total of $1.1 million for the first year, and then with growth it would be another $330,000 for the second year and $412,000 for the following year at 1.8 over a 3-year span. And if you flip over to the 3-year plan, I was actually looking at this. I received this late yesterday, and I was looking at this plan, and I see that it goes to $742,000 for year 1 if we went to a 3-year plan. However, I think that there must have been a miscalculation. It's probably $605,000 if I'm not mistaken. It looks like they only divided it up over 2 years with the $412,500. So instead of it being a 3-year plan, it looks like a 2-year plan. But other than that, everything else is correct, and that brings that total to the same as the 1.8 over 3 years. Excuse me.
These hepatitis shots are still voluntary, right?
According to our policy, all employees at risk should have a hepatitis vaccination. However, it is voluntary. They can opt out.
Yeah, that kind of was the way it used to be when we did those, and most of the people I was working with took the opportunity to get them because it's worth it, especially when it doesn't cost anything to you.
And they do have the option, if they do not want the vaccine, they can opt out.
That's not a vaccine that's covered through any kind of insurance?
Unfortunately, no. So we are looking at, I think when we had a discussion, he's got the same price point as Berkeley County. And so we're basing it on that, on the quotes, and it's because he was looking for something cheaper. But we actually talked about a plan if the employee uses their insurance, that we think it may drop the cost down to $45, and the district would pick up that expense. If I take my insurance card to the doctor and I get the shot, it would only be $45. But we have someone come in and just do it for the district, it would be a $250 each time.
Yeah, you're going to have to figure out, are you going to chase down all of the certifications that you got them, or you pay more for someone to come here and run through everybody and
Right,
know
so
that
we
you...
have to weigh those options as we go through this process.
So this isn't currently in the budget, or is it?
It's not in the budget, and it would have to be a designation of fund balance. And the reason I would look at it that way is because it was not done for several years, so I don't really look at it as an operational cost until we get current, and then you would incorporate it into your budget going forward.
So whatever we do will be taken out of the fund balance in addition to 1.5.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to have to get a titer from every single employee?
The ones that are at risk, yes. That's why it is so costly.
Yeah, so even the people that have gotten it in the past, they have to be titered.
Yes, sir.
It's yearly, isn't it? Don't you take that yearly?
That I'm not sure
I
of.
think it's yearly. It used to
No,
be.
no, it's a one-time, it's 3 shots that you get. It's supposed to be a lifetime.
Oh, yeah?
Vaccination.
Maybe they changed it, huh?
Well, it's not a lifetime vaccination. That's why they titer people, to see if they're still resistant.
Yeah, I had to have that for my
I've
job.
had it
Just
done.
3.
3 shots within a year, yeah.
And within a year or consecutive years, 3 years?
No, it's
No,
like
within a
one
year.
and then a
Within
month
the
later,
year?
then 9
Okay.
months later.
Well, if you got to do it, you got to do it, right? You got to fund it.
And I know we can't make a decision this evening. Are we leaning towards going ahead and trying to catch up in year one?
And I mean, it keeps our employees safe,
It
right?
keeps our employees safe. That would be my recommendation, is to do it in 1 year.
Yeah. It would also help us to be compliant with the federal regulation.
Yes, which is the most important, and keeping our employees safe is
Absolutely.
at the top of the list.
So that's 1.8 in addition to 1.5?
No, sir, if you'll just look on that first line, I believe it was, let's see, on year one, 1.1.
Okay.
That was,
And these are estimates if we did it in-house.
these are estimates, and they're high estimates, which is good, so we're hoping it's a lot less to do this process. And he will continuously try to find cheaper ways to do this.
One of those would be to have the teachers go to their own doctor, use the insurance, and then provide a receipt, which is a lot more administrative work, but
Yes.
it's what,
But it could cut our cost
1/3 of the price or something
tremendously,
like
yes. Okay.
Just hire a clinic to see all of our patients, all of our,
And maybe if it was 1/3 our cost and
Mhm.
they did that, then if we also figured out an additional benefit to them, if administratively it could work. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Absolutely.
you do this because you need it, but also
Mm-hmm.
some kind of incentive.
Yes. And we'll work diligently on getting that done. Okay. Okay. Any more questions about the hepatitis B?
So when are we going to bring this up again? We have the first reading?
The first reading in May. So it'll be the first board meeting in May. At the committee meeting will be the first one. Mhm.
So it will be 2.6.
Yes, sir.
thank you for being so thorough with all of our requests from last meeting.
I tried to make sure I did miss the painters, but we did incorporate everything that was requested.
Did you miss it, or you just didn't intend to do it? I mean, because I'm concerned about that just one little thing, and it seemed to be very small. But when we have our teachers trying to paint their own classrooms so they can get back in time for the next school year, you heard we had a room full of teachers here tonight who had some concern that the district doesn't care about them as much as we should. And I've heard of situations where teachers are painting their classroom. I taught school for some time, and my wife taught in elementary, in St. Stephen Elementary for several years, and she told me of some incident where they were trying to get their class ready because they didn't have enough painters. And when the statement was made that we only have 5, then I could see why. I understand James trying to be modest and trying to help, and I understand that, James, and I appreciate you for what you're doing. But the district can afford another painter, James. With it, it'll just be a drop in the bucket. And thank God for the money we got back.
Absolutely.
So,
If I can say,
and we can do that.
the allocation of the extra 4 people that we're talking about, I can make one of those.
You can make one a painter. Will you do that then? Because 47 schools is just a bit much for 5 painters.
Get it while you can, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, sir.
Get-
Thank you. Couldn't put it better myself.
Are we adding a painter or are we reallocating a position?
We can add a painter.
We'll add a painter. Okay.
What do you think? You good? You good with that?
Oh, that's
Okay,
good.
yeah.
One this year, maybe one next year.
Let's do it. Feeling good tonight, right?
Okay, we'll add a painter. Okay, and that is basically the end of this presentation. I knew this would be very short and sweet. Same millage rate. We address classrooms, teachers in the classroom, school safety, additional bookkeepers, additional painter, mental health counselors and social workers, which were all very important to the board. And our first reading will be at the first meeting in May.
Ashley, I just would want to say you've done an excellent job.
Well done.
And
Thank
we are
you.
just so thankful to have you. And
Well done.
Yeah, she wouldn't even take my check.
No, I said, you hold that. I don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. But I absolutely love my job, and it was a pleasure getting this together. So,
Thank you so much. I'll
Thank
now
you.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second.
The motion by Mr. McQuillan, a second by Mr. Ramsey to adjourn. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you, Jesus. We are adjourned.